But let's talk to David Davis now, Conservative MP for Halton Price and Howden, of course, a man that we got to know over the course of the summer up in Edinburgh with Alex Salmond and the incredible show that was going on there. Now, coming up, we're going to be talking about the COVID Disinformation Unit, because, quite frankly, I didn't even know it was still going. David, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again, yeah, and in more professional circumstances, you might say, since the last time. I must admit, when I saw this piece of the Telegraph, I had no idea that Disinformation Unit was still going. I thought that it was very much a kind of COVID-inspired sort of idea that came out of Matt Hancock's brain and was operated by Neil O'Brien. But it seems as though it's a much more pervasive problem than that.
No, it came out of a bigger space than Matt Hancock's brain. It originated actually in 2019 when they, I think with reason, were worried about foreign interference in our elections. So, you know, there was a good reason to have a unit that watched what was going on. But when COVID came along, the government were... Well, they basically wanted the public all to think the same as they did. That's, put it crudely, you know. So when it came to vaccines, they wanted us just to swallow the entire line, that vaccines should be for everybody, that everybody should have one. There shouldn't be any choice, you know, that we should have passports to show we'd had vaccines, all those sorts of things. When it came to the treatment, whether it's wearing masks or lockdown, we all had to believe the government's line, even though even now, years later, we still don't know what worked and what didn't work. You know, and there's some good argument that from Sweden, for example, that lockdown didn't work. So those were the sorts of things they were trying to control. And when people like myself and many others said, for example, I didn't like the idea of vaccine passports. I mean, we're a free country. Why should we carry these things? I got cancelled on YouTube. When quite eminent scientists were saying things about maybe the viability of giving vaccines to children, whether that's too risky or not. These characters are then sort of within an hour calling up the platforms and saying, you perhaps shouldn't be carrying this, or you should organise your algorithm so nobody sees it. Those sorts of things. Well, that's not what should happen in a democracy.
No.
Yeah, this is a democracy. You get truth by challenge. I mean, your whole program is based on the idea of challenging the existing.
Absolutely. And I was never sure if my name was on the list, but I know Julie Hartley-Brewer's name was on the list, and she was quite rightly, absolutely outraged by that idea. And in fact, Neil O'Brien...
I think he was probably on a blacklist to go with it. So.
Yeah, well, Neil O'Brien gave an interview to the Sunday Times, kind of boasting about the fact that he was keeping his eyes on some journalists who were actually, deviating from the chosen path of government policy, which is an extraordinary place for the British Parliament to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I mean, it's bad in any event, but it's particularly bad when you've got these massive areas of public policy where mistakes cost lives. Yeah. I mean, it's simple as that. Mistakes cost lives, and we know the government made loads of mistakes. I mean, I don't particularly criticise them for that. A brand new problem, very, very difficult to deal with, lots of uncertainty, but that's precisely the time you don't lock down people's opinions. I mean, it also comes from a very weird idea about science. I mean, most of the people who do this are not scientists at all. I'd certainly put my scientific qualifications up against the likes of Matt Hancock or indeed most ministers.
Right. Or indeed some of these behavioural scientists from Imperial College who are no more scientists really than sociologists.
Well, no, I mean, the very first thing I was picked up on was I wrote an article with Matt Ridley, who's was in the House of Lords, and he's a scientist as well by training, was this Imperial College model that Neil Ferguson had created. And he created it over 13 years, and it had never been right. Now, I've written dozens of mathematical models in my career. I used to use them in business. But, they've got real weaknesses, and you've got to be very, very careful about how you use them. And here's one, it was overestimating death rates from previous illness and from previous epidemics by tens, hundreds, thousands, even millions of times. And it was his model that we were relying on for really, really major policy decisions, which was mad. So I criticized it. I said, it's not been written properly. It's not been documented properly. Nobody's checked it or tested it. It's got a very bad empirical history, very bad history of making mistakes. And for that reason, I was put on the disinformation list.
Step.
I think I should have got a medal for it, frankly, because it turned out I was right and he was wrong.
Well, exactly right. I mean, all the people on it should get a medal because, I mean, it's a bit like when I now see people who go wandering about wearing masks because they think it's going to protect them from something. And you go, well, that's fine because it's identifying you. Unless we know that you've got some kind of vulnerability, there's not actually going to be anything much that it's going to help you with. But so what are they doing now, this disinformation unit, and what are they collecting information on?
Well, the truth is we don't know. Right. I mean, what we do know is it still exists. There was a rumor around, and I don't want to put her in trouble, but Michelle Donlan, who's the cabinet minister who's responsible for this, actually has got quite good instincts. I mean, she was the one who effectively took out the legal but harmful element of the online safety bill. Remember the controversy of that? Yeah. And she corrected that. So I think she's got pretty good instincts, actually. And I hear rumors that she herself wanted to shut this operation down and was stopped from doing so. But that's the right thing to do. I mean, and bear in mind, the CDU in her department, there's also something equivalent to the MOD and something equivalent to the Cabinet Office. So it's not just a one departmental thing. But it's obviously still there. The government hates to give up powers and control whenever it doesn't have to. And my view is we should shut them down. We should shut all of them down and then start again from scratch. And if you want protection from, let's say, Russian or Chinese interference, and today, of course, the front page of some newspapers is Chinese interference in Tory candidate selection. If you want to deal with that, then deal with it publicly, openly. Put a committee of the House of Commons in charge of it, not a minister hidden away in Whitehall, and do it properly. But don't allow it to be used as really a sort of Orwellian attempt to control members of Parliament, very, very senior and well-informed scientists, people are taking part in a public debate with the aim of trying to improve public policy and public understanding. You don't try and, in our country is famous for its freedoms. It's famous for its free speech. It's famous for its institutions. This is a corrosion of all those things and should go.
And should those people who have had information on them held by this unit be allowed to see what it is that people have been holding on them?
Yes, and broadly you can. I mean, if you suspect it, you can put in what's called a subject access request, which is what I did. I mean, this came into the public domain because we were getting a bit suspicious about behaviour patterns. I mean, what happened in the first instance was I was making a speech at Tory party conference saying, I don't like the idea of vaccine ID cards. If I have a vaccination, that's my business. Right. I shouldn't have to carry a card around. I hate ID cards anyway. It's sort of a continental idea that's never been appropriate in this country, and I got shut down, albeit for quite a brief period, by YouTube. They just cancelled me completely when they discovered who they cancelled. I think they had a sort of panic attack and put me back up again quickly. Right. And that started as being suspicious. So I put in a subject access request and got the information that's now in the public domain, and then Caroline Lucas did the same, and various of my colleagues did. Some who were not in the public domain, but one or two ministers actually were in it as well, and that's how we found it. So if you think you have been surveilled by these people, you can put in a subject access request, and they will tell you. You'll get a redacted thing back. They won't necessarily know exactly what they've done, but you'll at least know if you've been, as it were, in their attention. If anybody thinks that, I would recommend to do it. I think.
Well, I may do it just as a matter of interest, because
they probably take 2 years to send you back the great fat file.
Well, that is the thing. I mean, this is what I say. This is only in Parliament and only in the civil service do you get the answer when you ask the question, "How soon can I have that?" They give you the answer in years as opposed to in sort of days and or weeks.
That's right. That's
Incredible.
right. But I'm pretty sure you'll find you're listed somewhere.
I certainly hope so.
If I were you, I'd be very disappointed.
I would, yeah, absolutely. I'd be extremely disappointed if there was not a file. As I used to believe there was often a file on me in the FBI somewhere in America, because I got a White House press pass once. I'm pretty sure they must have delved around in my murky background before they gave me one of those. But there we are. David, good to see you. We must get together again soon. David Davies, Conservative MP for Howden and Holton Price, of course, on the COVID Disinformation Unit, which is still going and is still collecting information on people without their knowledge, effectively. Extraordinary stuff. Needs to stop, doesn't it? This is Talk TV.